Good evening. I would like to call to order the Arlington Heights Memorial Library Board of Trustees meeting for this Monday, September 8th, 2025. This is our committee of the whole meeting. Could I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Burrell? Here. Trustee Della? Here. Trustee Kelly? Here. Trustee McLean?
Here.
Trustee Meadow is currently absent. Trustee Watts? Here. President Samar?
Here. If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I see we have a member of our community, which is wonderful. Would you like to speak?
Not this time, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so tonight, we have the review of the draft of the 2026 budget. So we are going to discuss the budget that we will be approving at our next meeting. And so we have a lot of good information from Mike and from Tracy, our finance director. So
all right, I would invite Tracy to join us at the table and talk us through the budget draft. Is there any questions?
Okay. All right, so you guys have the budget memo in your pack, and then behind the memo is the draft of the budget as it stands today. We call this one draft one, kind of internally. And so it's pages 1 through 18, with page 1 being the overall summary, and then pages 2 to 18 being a separate page for each department's individual budget. You might notice a few like blue shaded cells throughout the document, and those are really, they won't impact our discussion at all. There's tiny little things for me to remember to like clean up in the next draft. So nothing meaningful with the blue cells. So I'm just gonna start with the summary on page 1. So you can see we include the current year 2025's budget in the first column, then our current best guess at a projection of where we'll actually end up at the end of 2025. And then finally a column for draft 1 of next year's 2026 budget. And then the top section is just the general fund, and below that, shows the capital fund. So as far as an overview of this draft 1, this draft shows general fund revenue of $16,669,940, which is a 2.5% increase over the 2025 budget. It includes increased property tax revenue, partially offset by an expected decrease in other income. General fund operating expenditures in this draft are $16,840,773, which is only a 0.7% increase over 2025 budgeted expenditures. So basically flat in terms of budget expenditures. And then those two things together equate to budgeted operating expenditures over budgeted revenues, or we might call it a budget deficit of about 171,000 in this draft. And for comparison, for this year, 2025, we budgeted a deficit of about $459,000. And then the year before that, in 2024, we budgeted a deficit of $872,000. I'll just pause there for a second, because obviously, that's the most significant difference in this proposed budget versus ones we've seen last few years, is that it does, seek to a levy increase that's enough to significantly reduce, our budget deficit to what we would consider a more reasonable amount, given sort of economic, the environment and the different services and things we want to continue to be able to provide. Ideally, I'd recommend getting that budget deficit down, to zero in the next couple of years if possible, and really carrying for the library like a true balanced budget. That's very similar to what the village does. They have a balanced budget. But I'll come back to all of this, in a lot more detail in just a second. But I just want to finish up kind of the big picture overview of the budget summary. The capital fund expenditures are expected to be $506,423 in 2026. In comparison to $1.5 million this year. And the only revenue to that capital project funds, besides just a very small amount of interest income, really is just whatever we transfer from the general fund which in this draft is $500,000. So, this will become another reason that having a sufficient, revenue now will be important for funding both short-term and long-term items. Just in reference to the targets, so with the exception of the proposed levy increase in this draft does have us within all of the 2026 budget targets that the board approved in June. And just as a reminder, just especially for those of you who are new, like the budget targets are developed at a time when we don't have current year projections yet. We're using assumptions, we're using historical trends, things of that nature to kind of develop targets. Their targets are great about, raising red flags early. If we start seeing some of those early budget numbers, tripping those thresholds that we set. But, they really are just guidelines. This is the moment in the budget process when we have much better information, kind of some projected actuals from the management team, to really have, informed budget recommendations at this point.
Okay, can I stop you for 1 second?
Sure.
Because you were going fast, which is awesome, but so this budget as recommended tonight, we would be budgeting a deficit of $170,833. Correct. What was the last one? I missed the one. You said in 2025, the
Oh,
way
sure.
we budgeted, and then the year before that was
Sure.
872,000.
Yes, so 2024, we budgeted a deficit of $872,000
Yes.
out. And then in 2025, you can see it about halfway down the page of the budget summary, it's $458,668. Yeah, and then I believe the year before that, 2023, I think was also kind of around that 800,000 mark, if I'm remembering correctly. So this would be the lowest budget deficit we carried in our budget for a while. So, and I'll talk about why we were comfortable with that deficit in the past based on the favorability we were seeing in our fund balance at the time. So times are changing a little bit, we keep an eye on stuff. So I'll walk through all of that.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so as far as the levy, right, the big topic of this budget, and just for some history, the library's only increased the tax levy 2 times in the past 15 years. One time was 1% and one time was 2%, which is effective for this 2025 budget year. The Village of Arlington Heights had a similar but shorter period of 0% tax levy increases. Theirs was about 5 years long. And they really do describe that period as a total anomaly. They will be increasing the tax levy for the Village this year and expect to going forward. I believe anything over 5% would, require a referendum. And we, as a staff, we recommend pursuing smaller increases, over time. I think that's just better for our taxpayers. It's better for the library, gives us a little more time to adjust. You might have heard in the news, the Village has, they have some other revenue streams that are unavailable to the library. So, they're gonna continue the grocery tax, they have a streaming tax that they're gonna put in place. And I believe some of the information I saw on that was, if they didn't do those things, they were looking at a levy increase of over 8%, so we don't have those things. In this draft, we're looking at a levy increase of about 4.45%. So the other revenue sources we have too, I think it's worth noting, are also declining. So we have very little that comes in the way of grants. The little bit of grant money we have is expected to remain flat. The other source of income is interest income on our invested assets, and just with interest rates, that it's just it's going to come in about 75,000 under budget in terms of revenue this year. We expect it to go down further next year. So when we raised the levy 2% effective for 2025, that was about $300,000 in total. Well, right away, like 75,000, we're not going to get from interest income. It's going to go down again. So, it's sort of wiped out about half of that, I would say, just because the other sources of revenue, although they're very small, are offsetting that very, very small levy increase we pursued.
Can I ask about, I think I know the answer, but just to reiterate, and also, Mike, you can tell me if I'm correct in this, just in terms of things that could happen nationally, we would still receive our grant money from the state,
Theoretically, yes.
right? So, are there any other major sources of income for us that could be cut off with some of any funding that's cut off.
I don't think, as far as federal funds go,
We don't really rely too much on
right,
that.
right.
So-
The, MLS money was through I can't remember the name of the grants, but we really don't receive very much as far as federal money goes. I don't know that we actually receive anything directly from the federal government.
It would run
What
through a
we,
third party.
it runs through state of Illinois, rails,
Right.
stuff like that. So there is some, but it's not a substantial amount, I would say. One of the other factors too that, that changed fairly recently, was during COVID, we reduced fines, and that was around $100,000 to $150,000 a year that, was another revenue source for us. And then, of course, we have our Friends of Foundation, of course, that we, lean on for larger purchases, and, well, not all larger purchases throughout the year, but.
Right. I just wanna put that out there. Obviously, commodities are changing and perhaps some capital projects based on, I don't know, tariffs or the way that we purchase certain things. But generally, our source of income is tax revenue.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, 99%
Right.
of our revenue is that.
Right.
In our case, we had such a long period of 0% levy increases, expenses are just naturally gonna rise year over year, sometimes they'll just rise a little bit, and then like in recent years, we see them rise faster, but whether they're rising slower or faster, they are rising, and if you're keeping that top line flat, it just stands to reason. At some point, you do have to make adjustments. So I think we're kind of at the point where, we've been kind of watching, keeping an eye on things. We're sort of at the point where I think it's time to you go ahead and make some adjustments, because we don't want to get into a place where we're, having to make large adjustments. The good news is that we also have a long history of ending every year favorable to budget in terms of expense management. So usually we're kind of ending around $1 million favorable for probably as many years as I've been here, or at least close to that. Started last year, and this is kind of going back to why we were comfortable carrying a larger budget deficit, because our trend, of expense management really showed that we would more than make up that deficit and still be comfortable. So starting around this time last year, we started seeing that we weren't going to be probably favorable enough to make up the level of deficit we were budgeting. So, keeping an eye on it. That's why we ended up pursuing a very, very small levy increase for this year. And we still came in favorable on the expenditure side. But when you look at it in comparison to the actual revenues that we took in, we ended the year, basically flat, slightly unfavorable in terms of expenditures being slightly over revenue. So it's just why I'm at the point where I'm less comfortable budgeting a deficit, and instead recommend moving forward closer to that budget if possible. The graph on page 2 of your memo kind of shows visually when I'm talking about how that top line, will kind of converge with rising expenses over time. That's sort of just kind of a natural occurrence. We need enough revenue, not just to cover our operating expenses today, but enough excess in those to, fund future capital projects, set the money aside, and be prepared for kind of unexpected operating costs too. That's kind of what it means to me to be fiscally responsible. It's not just never increasing the levy, but it's increasing it just enough to where we can, kind of smooth out the impacts to our taxpayers, be prepared for capital needs for the library, but also be prepared for, unexpected operating increases too that could happen. For example, in this budget, we have enough information to know that our employer IMRF costs are really not going to go up very much this year. IMRF tells us as an employer, what we need to contribute to fund, the future pensions of our IMRF eligible staff, and we contribute that. So it's great. It was 8.01% for 25. It's going to be about 8.28% for 2026. It's going up a little bit, but not having a huge impact on our budget. It could happen that next year we find out our employer rate is, jumping up because of actuarial calculations and things that go behind funding that liability. So think it's important that we keep that in mind when we're thinking about having like a little bit of excess in terms of the revenue we're bringing in. So it's just an example. It's like, yes, we want to save for capital needs, but we also want to have a little, a healthy fund balance and be sort of at the top of our policy range so that we're prepared for things like that. We also saw lower than expected medical insurance. On the summer, I think it's a 2.9% increase in benefits in total for year-over-year library staff. That came in much lower than I was anticipating, much lower than peers. I think our relationship with the village and being the same demographic with them really has helped a lot. It also is a function of just sort of, I don't know, not luck for lack of a better word, but just the selections that our staff make relative to the total population and the piece that the library gets allocated based on, what our prime benefits eligible staff have selected. So I was surprised that was so low. That could be higher next year. Industry-wide, we talked a long time last year about how medical insurance premiums are going up like close to double digits, and haven't been slowing down too much. So just wanting to be prepared for even operating expenses that could surprise us, not in 2026 necessarily, but maybe 27, maybe 28. And of course, setting money aside for those capital needs too. I did want to talk a little bit about our expense management process because of course we've been operating a budget to ask me for a tax levy increase without having done a lot of work internally first to see where we could find, offsets to that a little bit. So just of course, in the interest of full transparency, how we came up with that 4.5%, but just so you can understand the process too, it sort of all starts with the management team. They submit what they think they need in terms of dollar amounts to fulfill the things in the strategic plan for their department. They reduce controllable spending wherever they can. You can see that in the individual department pages where people are kind of even reducing or moving things around. They look very closely at those budgets. Not all the lines increase, some definitely decrease. Admin with HR and management, they review every vacated position to see if, do we really need that? Can we change some operations a little bit? Can we move some hours around? And as a result of that, our full-time headcount actually will decrease slightly just via attrition and kind of rearranging things so that saves on personnel costs. Anything that a department head would like to include in the budget that's over 1% more than the previous year, we look at every single one individually on a case-by-case basis. So we looked at, over 130 requests this year, I think. So we spend that time, we make sure it's in conjunction with the strategic plan, that it's kind of a need to have, not nice to have. We approved 60% of those 130 requests for this draft of the budget. It worked out to be 25,000 less than last year. So we're trying to be very mindful about, those kind of one-off things we're approving. After that process, we actually looked at the first draft, I'll call it draft zero, if you will. We had a budget of deficit of $800,000. So we're like, well, we're not comfortable with that, with that yet. So we went back to the drawing board again, we revisited the things that we did approve. We worked with managers on accounts. We kind of looked at a multi-year look through the detailed accounts, be where are we seeing accounts come in really favorable? And we work with those managers to see what we can kind of release there. So we reduce those budgets even further. Again, you can kind of see those things in the department pages. And at the end of that process, we ended up with overall operating expenditures year over year going up under 1%. So we felt really good about kind of the work we had done internally in terms of expense management. So since based on the manager's projections for 2025 that we have now, we're projecting to end the year with expenditures over revenues of about 171,000. That's where I set the deficit, and then that's how I backed in and calculated the 4.45%. So we're not shooting a dart at the wall, right? There's math behind it, and we can't see the future, of course, but just kind of trying to apply a process. And my whole point is just to really let you know that we really are doing everything we can internally to kind of offset and meet the board and the community halfway in terms of the levy.
Well, I think, one thing that really stood out to me is, bringing down full-time employment by 1.8 to almost 2 full-time staff people. I think that's terrific. It feels like when you're doing your reports every month, there's always 1 or 2 positions that are open, so. And we know that salaries and staff are 72% of our budget, so that's, that's the major part, and we wanna make sure that we take care of our staff, and so anyway, I thought that was really helpful, and that, insurance costs, all of it.
I know various board members have asked kind of about some different scenarios, like, oh, do we have to do this? It feels like a lot because it's double what we did this year, but in terms of industry comparisons, it's still quite low. And I don't say that lightly. I'm a taxpayer, I'm a resident myself, like everything adds up. But in terms of our long history of 0%, and in terms of what other libraries are doing, village is doing, it still is modest, I will say. I think it's worth noting that I think that some of the board members asked, what would that look like to an average taxpayer bill? And so the 4.45%, and then the kind of future that ones that I know we're skipping ahead a little bit to the long range fiscal plan, we kind of showed how we can maybe take a few smaller ones over a few years, kind of decrease what we're asking in terms of an increase. If we followed what's laid out in the long range fiscal plan, which includes this first year of 4.45%, that would be about $63 in total cumulatively over 5 years to the average household. So that's like $12.50 each year for 5 years, again, for the household, not for the individual. If we wanted to do something lower, like by 3% in that first year, and then the ones that are laid out, I mean, it's $11 for each one. So it's not like a huge difference in terms of the annual impact to the taxpayer. Again, I don't say it vaguely, it adds up, but it would make a huge difference, I think, in terms of, setting the library up for financial health long-term as well.
I think it is helpful to know like what the impact is to each house because, I'm a taxpayer of Arlington Heights too, right? So like, I know that the school district is looking at levies. I know that the park district is looking at levies. So it's the cumulative impact of all of the levies, which like the library needs its slice of that pie too, right? Like the same economic factors that are impacting them are also impacting us in different ways. So like, I definitely can appreciate that, but I can also appreciate from like the community, everyone goes to the same grocery stores and it's like, oh dear. So I appreciate us looking at one, what it's gonna mean in real dollars to the household. And then two, like, I appreciate you saying like, okay, we look at what is the nice to have versus, the needs versus the wants, because like, especially in a time where everyone's feeling the squeeze, things that are the nice to haves rather than the needs can come off as being very disrespectful of the people who are putting money towards it. So I just wanted to say thank you on both of those parts. And I also very much appreciate moving towards a balanced budget. Business person in me appreciates that. Like, I don't like the negative numbers. So just thank you for all of the work on this. That was really helpful.
Yeah, and thank you. I echo what trustee Hott said, is just the comprehensiveness and the planning that you went into and really with each step and kind of tiered approach to making sure that everyone's voice is there, and then there still is kind of a conservative approach to what do we need. And just to point out, and the people again that are newer listening, just that we're looking at, the capital projects fund, when we transfer that, right, that's kind of, so to speak, it's a transfer from our state gains.
Yes.
You said,
Yeah.
right? So, looking at over a year, we transferred, what we're transferring, and then this year from the general fund, it's projected of 500,000, right? So we're seeing the numbers go down in that, the ending fund balance from, so the actual was at 915, well, that's going, it's at 938,698. A little different from the original budget amended draft, but just that again, seeing that as in my head, it's kind of the savings for those big, the capital projects that are the elevators, the, you know, structural things that we need to take care of, that those are the needs and not the wants. So, you know, keeping that in mind is that, you know, we keep taking from that. So I
Mhm.
appreciate, again, kind of been putting perspective on 3 versus 4, you know,
Yeah.
cause it does, you know, so thank you for that. Too, and what it means for each household. But again, as you said, it accumulates too. So thank you though.
Yeah, and we do wanna avoid, you know, needing to go to the residents and be like, oh, we need to increase the levy because we need to do this one thing to the building. You know, like it's, we would like to be more proactive in our planning and saving them than that and be a little bit more flexible. And that in turn has the other benefit effect of smoothing kind of what the taxpayer sees in their bills too. So it's still an increase, you know, which is not ideal, but you know, sometimes taxes are that necessary evil in order to provide services. There's always the option to reduce services, you know, like if keeping the levy flat was the ultimate priority, the flip side of that is, you know, like you said, we talk a lot about our expense management. The next step of that is cutting services, you know, that there's kind of no way to sugarcoat that otherwise.
Just in case, just as a reminder for anyone that could be watching. As a governing body, if we wanted a levy that would be 5% or higher, we would have to go to our taxpayers and seek a referendum. So it seems that some other local groups, like the Park District, I think, does a 4.9%, 4.99% increase every year because they don't have to go to taxpayers and, you know, they have a lot of land and whatever. I know that the village sets it differently every year. Do you know what the school districts do? And those are the biggest parts of all our tax bills.
No, I know that was a question the board had, and I will look into it, but I didn't have time for it
Yeah.
this evening. So.
But I also think we need to recognize that everyone in Arlington Heights got a, new assessment and I haven't heard of any ones that went down. I mean, and yes, people, contest those or, you know, might make it not go up as high, but it's a big number for a lot of people.
If I may,
Yeah,
on
sure.
the tax assessment, some people are seeing, yeah, large increases in their assessed value of their home, but that doesn't necessarily equate to a higher tax bill. It's if their assessment goes up more relative to how much their neighbors' assessments are going up. So if everybody's go up like double, your tax bill will still be the same. Now, if yours goes up more and your neighbors goes up less, then yes, your tax bill might change a little bit. So sometimes I just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
that was clear too. People's tax bills will go up if we increase the levy. That, you know, again, we're just the library, we're at the small piece of a Arlington Heights residents' tax bill. We're on the same tax bill with, you know, the village. But you know, it's still a levy increase will increase your taxes, but your assessed value alone going up doesn't necessarily increase your taxes. It's how yours goes up relative to your neighbors.
No.
Yeah,
I was just gonna say, you know, kind of looking big picture, you know, in that graph on the second page. Our expenditures do continue to go up every year. There's fixed increases every year, such as benefits and salaries that continue to increase. And our revenue obviously has been very close to the same year to year over 13 years or 14 years. So at some point, you know, we are gonna have to make a bigger change. And with financials like this, you don't wanna make big swings. You wanna do smaller incremental changes. We don't wanna have a big impact to the tax bill. We don't wanna have a big impact to services either, you know? And we have done quite a bit of work, as Tracy mentioned, you know, kind of trimming as much as we can on operating. We do have a lot of capital expenditures as well. Those typically are short-term expenditures. So, you know, we'll do a project or something that'll come out of the capital fund. But if you look long-term, those two lines are still gonna converge. And once that expenditure line gets up over that revenue line, it's tough to get it back, you know, because it's gonna just continue to grow. With, like I said, with benefits and salaries, which make up 72, 73% of our budget, it's tough to get that back without going up over that 5% eventually. So, just wanted to kind of point that part out.
Benefits aren't gonna get less expensive. I
Yeah.
work in the industry, so I can definitively say that.
And we are very fortunate having such a low increase on benefits this year, comparing to other directors of libraries in the area. Many of them are over 10, 15. I think there's one or two that are over 20%. So being that we are at 2.9%, it's pretty critical.
Yeah, and that's one of the non-controllable sort of unexpected costs that keep you up at night, so to speak. Like, if all of a sudden an open enrollment this year, all of our full-time staff decide they want like the family PPO plan, that we will get a bigger, not only will we get the increasing just industry rate, we will get a bigger piece of the overall pie, because now our staff are selecting the most expensive plan. And we do, do I think that will happen? No, I think there will be more of a bell curve in what people select, and, they're educated and they understand the difference between plans and choose what's right for them. So, but it could happen, right? That the mix changes enough to have an impact on our budget, that I want us to be prepared for.
And one of the highest rising costs, wasn't that not health insurance, but it was actually insurance on the buildings, right? Like, when we looked at the original budget, like, I'm just going back to like.
Property insurance?
Yes.
No, they actually didn't increase.
Okay.
I mean, well, I will say the placeholder that Lyra, which is our insurance consortium for property and casualty and all that other stuff, workers' comp, things like that. They're conservative at target time, and so they're like, yeah, it's gonna go out maybe 13%. The last couple years, it hasn't gone up too much. And for this year, we didn't even need to put a budget add-on in. The amount we already had in our budget was sufficient, so we added nothing in terms of that. It's like, I don't know, a couple $100,000, on a $16 million budget. So the percent makes it look like it's going up a big amount, but in terms of dollars relative to our total budget, it's like lower. Yeah. I always think it's a little weird. We call it out on that target. So like kind of sticks in your brain, but it's actually such a small piece.
Yeah, like the 13%.
Yeah, it stands out, right? I know. I kind of go back and forth with whether we need to call it out on the targets, because yeah, it's bigger than a 1 or 2% increase, but it's also such a small piece that
Makes sense.
yeah.
Can you tell us about the capital projects and what you would like to do next year?
Sure. Yeah. Were you gonna highlight
No, you feel free, yeah.
capital?
Yeah.
So next year for capital projects, we're not doing any major construction. Next year, we are gonna hold off probably a year to do that. One of the things that we have scheduled for next year is to do kind of like a first floor assessment and look at everything, not just layout, but services and stuff like that so when we do construction, we're really thoughtful about everything that we're moving and building out. So that is one of the things that we're been planning for the next couple years. Besides that, we have the second half of the bookmobile expenditure going out next year.
So the money that you have allocated for that is the money that you anticipate us putting in. I'm curious as to how it works with the Friends and the foundation. for
Sure. So far, we put the 50% deposit down, that is gonna be in the check register for
Right.
next month,
Like
or
200.
for this month, yeah. The foundation has written a check for $50,000, so for part of that, and then we're writing a check for $249,000. Which I will let Tracy speak to which funds that comes out of,
Mhm.
but if you.
So we have, sitting in deferred revenue, we have just general donation money that we have collected from, small amounts over the years. And then we've been, the beneficiaries, some very generous, like individual donors via trust donations that we've set aside and earmarked for the bookmobile as well. So as we pay the library share, like not the foundation's share, as we pay that library share, we hit that deferred revenue at the same time. So there's no net impact to our, spending in this year, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So this year, we spent 249,000 and the foundation spent
50,000.
50,000, which goes through our books.
Right.
In and out.
Actually, no, they wrote a separate check,
Okay.
so it doesn't even.
Yeah, foundation doesn't have, the Friends, anything
The
a
Friends.
Friends would fund would flow through
Yeah.
like kind of the way an individual donor would flow
Right.
through our budget, but.
Right. So basically, the company's getting $300,000 this year, or $299,000 this year. And so next year, we anticipate another 313.
Correct.
Some of that might be friends flowing through us. Or
Yes,
not.
friends will probably flow through us. Foundation will still be separate.
Separate.
Yeah, so foundation has committed to 150,000, so they would cover 100,000 of that.
Right,
Friends has not, they've committed to supporting it, but we don't know how much
right.
as of yet. I think they want to kind of see where
I noticed
their
that last,
balances.
book sale was designated.
Yeah, then,
But we're still saying that despite the 100,000 more from the foundation, we will still need to add 313.
no, that would be, the foundation will cover 100,000 of that.
Okay, so in that case, I'm just trying to figure out how,
It's 213 minus the friends,
Yeah.
whatever that
Right.
ends up being.
well, and I know we don't know exactly how much the friends, but we can sort of, you know, I think the
Book sounds like
foundation is,
27,000.
yeah, doing really well with their fundraising.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to see, like, any way that we could do a little bit lower levy, and so that's,
Mhm.
you know, you've done an amazing job on all of this. And I'm still thinking about all of our taxpayers who are getting increases, and I hear what you're saying, but I know that, like, you know, if mine went up 40%, it's gonna go up. There's people's that are gonna go up a lot. And then we have a streaming fee, and now, you know, the school boards in the park district. It's just, I'm just trying to think about our taxpayers and like what.
Mhm.
Could, you know, is there a way we could do 4%? What would that look like? So that's why I asked, because the bookmobile is the only one. So tell
Yeah,
me
we
about
do
the
have-
other,
Sure, we do have some upgrades in IT. It's more infrastructure upgrades, switching, where more back-end stuff. We're also gonna replace our security cameras. A lot of our security cameras are very old, and the picture is not great on them by any means. And then we have some more computer replacements. One of the benefits to doing the network upgrade this year or this next year is, as you all know, we became eligible for E-rate funding.
Mhm.
And the way E-rate works is there's a 5-year segment that kind of rotates. So every 5 years you get so much that you can receive from E-rate. We're in the last year of that 5-year cycle.
Mhm.
Being that we haven't taken anything before this year, we are eligible for more money than normal. And so we're planning for these network upgrades. We wanted to ensure that that happens this year so we can get more money replaced,
Mhm.
or, you know, compensated for this. So we get about, I think it's 40% of the cost of the equipment gets covered by E-rate. So that's a huge amount that we certainly don't want to lose, yeah.
Mhm.
Was I understanding that correctly? That part of the idea behind the levy is like, one, we have to close the deficit, not just because of next year's expenses, but when I looked at the long range plan, like next year wasn't so bad. But then like starting in 2027, there was like some woolly kind of upgrades and things that we needed to address. And that part of the plan for now is like, okay, well, to Amy's point, like if we can get it down to 4%, it's to do that now so that we don't have to do 6% in 2 years. Like we're trying to.
Yeah, and to get into long range planning a little bit, the long range fiscal plan is a living document. And so we do look at that every year, and we talk about planning for this year and what equipment needs to be replaced and what equipment, you know, we can continue to maintain and hold off on. We do an assessment, I think, every 7 to 10 years. Darnell, I know you had the question of, would it be beneficial to do that more often or to look at that more often? We do feel comfortable with the current schedule for the actual assessment, because we have a good, really a good understanding of our facility through those assessments and what kind of needs to be done just by end of life for the equipment that we have. We have done a lot of upgrades to our HVAC, electrical, a lot of things, over the past few years. And with that plan or the assessment, that puts it on our radar, and then we watch that equipment and we, say, okay, can we, kind of step this out 5 years? One of the things that was mentioned was elevators, that upgrade, what does that look like? Is there a better time to do that? So every year when we look at this, we decide, okay, the priority next year, so for 2026, one of the things that we're including is a fire alarm control panel. We feel like that's more of a priority than, say, the elevators. The elevators do need updating, but there's not a specific problem with them. That, they might be slow or they need to react and stuff like that, but they're stable and they're working well. Where the fire alarm life safety device, that is an older panel, the devices are older. It was actually recommended by the fire department to upgrade to an addressable system in the future, and that is something that we're looking at. So we felt that that is something that we'd want to make sure that gets into this next year for long range plan. Now, there is always a balance of when you push something off to the future, it's going to cost us more money because that is going to be a larger expense down the road due to inflation and stuff. And as you're maintaining it, there may be breakdowns, out of service, stuff like that. So we have a phenomenal facilities team that really measures what we can push off or not even do, or things that we need to prioritize. And so we do take a very good look at that and ensure that the things that we're doing are necessary. And ironically, some of the latest issues that we had, and it came up in the check register questions last meeting, for the HVAC equipment, we had a couple of repairs. That's all newer equipment that happened too. So that was the equipment on this roof here and the large unit, the Four Seasons unit over at the main library. So even though we're replacing it, sometimes the older equipment is more solid, a little bit simpler.
Anyone with an old washing machine, those whirlpools, 20 years will last forever.
Yeah, so it's very calculated on the things that make that long range plan, and next year that might look a little different. There may be things that we move down, based on our priorities for the year.
What are outside air dampers? I just don't know what.
They are large flaps that pull air in from the outside and introduce it into the HVAC system at the main library.
Yeah.
And they're no longer functional.
Okay.
Well, they're kind of functional, but not really. We've nursed them along as much as we can.
Mhm.
And that helps us control the humidity within the building and, efficiency of the system and stuff. And so we do feel like that would be a worthwhile thing for next year as well. So the outside air dampers are something that we were thinking about for next year. I think those are all the capital
Right, I was
things
just
for
looking
next
at
year.
that. I know it probably won't be a lot, but is there anywhere that how much do we think we could get for the old bookmobile?
I hate to throw out a number
Yeah.
because we haven't had it looked at or anything. I'm thinking somewhere around $30,000. So that would be a little bit,
Yeah.
back to us.
Right.
And that's just purely based on what I've seen on other sites of used bookmobiles. It might be higher, might be lower. I
Right.
don't know right now.
Before we really get to the long range, does anyone have any other questions regarding item number one? Or do you want to go through each department or?
No, only if you have questions, I would just point out that anything that has an approved add-on or transfer automatically has commentary to it.
Mhm.
So there's a note next to everything. So if at any point as you flip through or, at this time at the October cow, you want to see, more information on any of those, there's no add-on that would have
Right.
for the sake of, transparency. I don't know, you want to highlight?
Do you want to talk a little bit about factoring in potential inflationary pressures that might exceed the 2% assumption?
We can talk about that when we're at the long range fiscal plan. I guess the one last thing I'll note on the budget itself is we do have, someone asked, I think it might have been who asked if there was any contingency money. We do have some contingency money in the operating budget. So in certain places. So you know, if the HVAC, you know, needs repairing, you know, there, some facilities have or has a contingency, some IT lines have contingency, admin has a little bit of contingency, not a ton, it's certainly not gonna absorb some giant capital project that, you know, we don't see coming, but, you know, we do try to carry those forward in the budget, because inevitably we have to use like a portion of them here and there sometimes.
Memory Cafe, that was one thing I noticed. What is that? Is that,
The Memory Cafe?
yeah,
Program, do you wanna
Yeah.
talk about that?
For caregivers who are caring for families with dementia or someone
Yeah.
with dementia. So it's not a big boost, but, yeah, we're working with the village of Bill, I'm very excited about it.
I feel like I saw that at one of the ALA,
Yeah, it's a good support.
seminars. That's really nice. Yeah.
One of the other things I'll mention is the thermal imaging. It's an add-on on page 9 for facilities. This is one of the ways that we can kind of keep tabs on things that are in the engineering assessment. So one of the things that, in the engineering assessment that was identified is our large electrical panels. And to replace those is a very costly endeavor. Ours are in good shape, but according to, the engineers, you know, they kind of have a list of expected life for certain components. So one way to tell the condition of a large electrical panel is to scan it with a thermal camera and see where the hotspots are. And if you have hotspots, if you start to show hotspots, that means contacts are starting to wear and stuff like that. We have this done every so often, just to look at the condition, because when you're looking at the panel, you can't really tell. So we have a professional come out, do a thermal image of the panels and look for those hotspots, and our panels are in very good condition. Yeah, but we do continue to do that. So that's an add-on that'll be for next year. We'll come out, or somebody will come out, take a look at the panels and just kind of give us an assessment of their condition. And that helps us plan for long range planning. Take that from.
Yeah, I mean, going through each department, obviously, like facilities was the largest one by far, but
Mhm.
that in bookmobile, but
Tracy,
yeah.
were there these, small interdepartment transfers, there's a lot of that, I just want to make sure I'm understanding that.
Yes.
Is that just kind of something like, oh, this fits better under this other department, or?
It's not even so much that it fits better, it's just that like, oh, hey, you know, we've been running over on this account. We can reduce this account, but actually we're running under on this, you're over on this account, you know, so we could need a little bit more money here.
Okay.
So it's a manager kind of looking at their own kind of department as holistically and saying like, I can give up here, but I really do need some here. So rather than asking for extra money, they're just kind
Okay.
of working within their own budget.
Okay.
They still have to request it because it is up to, you know, admin, you know, like, well, if you can reduce here, maybe you don't need it here, maybe the organization needs that money. So we do still ask that they, you know, submit their transfers, you know, for review. If they're like, you know, $100 here or there, that they're just kind of shifting around. So many of the department heads have such small budgets and they do manage them very, very carefully, but sometimes those are just, you know, immaterial dollar amounts and they're just net to zero and they're just trying to manage their own budget.
Okay, that's super helpful.
Right. Any more discussion before we go to the long range plan? It's also related.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, so again, the last time we looked at the long range fiscal plan during budget target time, we didn't have projections for 2025 yet, so we use those assumptions, we use those historical trends, usually kind of over a 5-year period. So the current projections are now in that that column that says estimate 2025 column. And then the current assumptions that we are including in the draft of the budget that you have tonight are also along the top of the page. So these documents are synced up again. Let's see. We talked about that a little bit. So we assume in this model that operating expenses will increase 2% each year. But you're absolutely right to point out that, you know, certain costs are definitely going to increase more than that. So actually, we do include an additional adjustment for things like personnel costs that go up more than that, and that's baked into rows H and I, and then we footnoted footnote 5. So it's the 2% overall, but then there's like a manual adjustment in those cells that compounds on itself, because we know that there's no way personnel costs in total will only go up 2%, and we don't want that to blindside us, so we just added those cells and then footnote it down at the bottom. I think we asked about, row L, just for those of you, who saw the unincurred expenditures that are estimated. It's zero, you know, for the years that are past and zero for 2025, because we have a good idea of what we'll actually spend at this point. But for 2026 and beyond, when we kind of don't know, we're just in the budgeting stage, like I said, we have a history of ending the year favorable to budget. So that line adjusts down to like, yeah, I think we'll, you know, not incur about $500,000. It's based on a percentage. And so it's just trying to give us a slightly more realistic look in this long range fiscal plan if we can. But then I say that another side of this, you know, making it slightly unrealistic, is that the further you go out in the columns of this document, the less realistic it becomes, because you're layering assumptions upon assumptions upon assumptions. And those compound on themselves, but we have time to react. And you know, this does reflect all of the capital projects on the second page, but if you look, a lot of those say placeholder. So like Mike was talking about, maybe we won't do exactly that. Maybe we'll find a different solution. Maybe at some point we'll have a new engineering assessment and change kind of the course. You know, we'll have time to kind of keep those on the shorter term radar. We just don't want to lose sight of them completely. So we do include the placeholder there.
And just for our new trustees, row R is a particularly important row because by our policy, we are required to have no less than 33% and no more than 75% of our coming year's expected operating costs. So you can see, like in 2023, we were actually a little high because we had 78%. I mean, really shouldn't have more than 75%. 2024, this year, we're really right in that sweet spot. I mean, the perfect middle of that would be about 54%. And frankly, the numbers have looked worse further out than they look now. So I just, you know, I don't want people to feel like, oh my goodness, we don't have enough money. And like this year, when the Cook County tax bills didn't go out on time, haven't gone out, we can still pay salary and we can still pay our bills even before we get that second trove of tax dollars, because we do have money. And I would just say too, that the one thing that just bugs me about those tax bills is that even though we put an extra 2%, the village puts an extra 2% on the tax bills for lost taxes, we're still only getting about 95%, or at least this year. Maybe people are paying late, but that's not great. That's not great for us when we depend so much on tax revenue. So, you know, things are obviously always going to be in flux. And as we all know, when the bears come, which I think will happen, and it might not be for a long time, but that's really going to change things. I don't know how, but it'll change things. It could add a lot more customers to the library. It will add more tax revenue to the city, but then, you know, anything. It's just something that's in the long range that is so unknown, for sure. Are there any other things you want to call out on this?
No, nothing specific, just anyone has any other questions?
Trustee Kelly, you've been quiet. What are your thoughts?
Oh. Of course, I don't like a negative number, especially when I said too. So I'm looking at, it is what it is. I don't like the negative number. I don't like going from, like, it doesn't look like the levy is an anomaly again. It looks like you're projecting. So the days of the 0% levy is like behind us. So I'm just looking, if we are having a levy, or considering the levy, you know, where it goes, or we went from 0 for so long, then we went to 2, but now it's jumping to 4, just bypassing the whole number 3. And then coming back to the number 3s, I'm wondering how that could be changed in over the long range plan. And then also just, I mean, I don't really think it matters, but I'm just curious. Because I really wasn't here during all the 0%. I just remember we started talking about it when I was first on it, so it was kind of historical. Was a reasoning mostly for the long duration of the 0% because we had a balanced budget? Was it because the board was like adamant about not having a levy? Was there, I mean, there's so many subjective versus objective things. I'm just wondering what the historical consensus was for that long ranging 0% levy. Then we like threw in the 2%. I mean, I just remember having a big conversation about it last year. So I just don't know what the backstory was.
Have to defer to Mike.
Yeah. Those revenue and expenditure lines were farther apart.
Okay,
We had more that we could rely on, in our accounts for, capital and for operations where, we just did not see the revenue, surpassing or, I'm sorry, the expenses surpassing the revenue at that point. So we were able to kind of let that over time come closer together. And, going that long, where your expenses continue to rise and revenue slowly comes up, just with those few things, it just eventually would catch up. And that's kind of the point where we're
it's
at.
like that perfect storm where,
Yeah, and we've done
Yeah.
things internally to keep those lines apart as much as possible. But it's just, we're kind of at a point now where we need to start moving this way. Otherwise, we're gonna find ourselves in a bad position, because once that expense line crosses over that revenue line, that's not a good situation, those percentages that we have on, are, that could change pretty drastically, and we can't.
and as
just go
Amy
back
said,
to-
I do recall them being further apart, I
Mhm.
mean, higher or lower.
Well, I
whatever.
mean, even I really like this chart, but you can see, I mean, they were far apart, and obviously the kind of 2 major COVID years. There's reasoning for that, but our expenses were a lot lower than our budgets, but I appreciate that we're budgeting more accurately now. We should budget accurately. We should, or, there's a lot of reasons.
Yeah, I don't wanna
No,
rely on favorability,
No,
right? You don't wanna have to depend on it. But you bring a good example with that first column on the long range fiscal plan about the 2023, how we ended the year over our fund balance policy. I was here that year, and I can tell you, I know we didn't pursue a levy increase for 2024 because of that, right? It's like we have more than we need. We did a transfer to get us back into the 75%, and that's exactly to me how it should be working. Let's end a little over that 75. Let's move that excess over to capital. We're ready. And the little bit moving into capital is okay. We don't have like a maker place that we're trying to build at this time, where you have to really be cognizant of like moving large amounts. But I think that's kind of the sweet spot for me, is like kind of right at the top of that policy range, a little bit over, take that excess each year, and just nominally to kind of prepare you. But because that's what we were seeing, that's what made us comfortable with 0% levy increase that following year, because we're good right now. So we're not gonna take it when we don't need it.
Yeah, and just
Yeah.
that, just to answer, a little bit too, is that, yes, things were, that eventually it might catch up, but there were also some like anomalies. Like we had a really unusually high interest return that was like
Right.
astronomical. It was just not, you couldn't predict that, and there, like, as was said, there wasn't a reason to. And then also, cost of goods would that, the prices that we're seeing, as you mentioned, the grocery store, I mean, we're seeing prices now that we haven't seen. So.
And we don't know so many
And we
prices.
don't know, and then when we had also there, even in building, if it was last year, or the year before, so maybe FY 23 of cost, I mean, you couldn't get a hold of goods either, and then the cost to be able to get them once you were able to secure them, that went up too. So the volatility has also led to the need to be able to kind of think ahead, and again, appreciate the kind of the proactive stance of like, all right, now we need to take some action. So I don't know if it was just that, like, we were watching it increase. It was also that it just, the goods and services, the timelines of things, it just wasn't, it didn't necessitate, an increase either. So just kind of everything feels a little more volatile, and it is, not just feels, but it is on the checks coming in, like it is.
So I remember last year, we kind of had price points or, levy percentage points. I think we brought like, if we did this number, if we did this number, and we did that number, you had translated it into actual dollars. You took it from percentages to dollars, like how much it would affect the deficit. Do we have anything like that? If it was, I mean, I don't even know what my price point would be, like 3.5, 3.8, 4.
Yeah.
Like, what is the differential?
So here's an example. So if we wanted to, board's preference to keep it under 4% for next year, and we set it like a 3.9, that would change the budget deficit, for 2026 to 255,000.
255, okay.
255 instead of 171 that is in the current draft. So I mean, it's still a step in the right direction towards where I would prefer to go, recommend going, as opposed to a little larger deficit. I do think we would make up a deficit of that size. But it would give us less access, to kind of cover those kind of non-controllable operating expenses, those things like the IMRF or the medical insurance that, could pop up. Would our fund balance wouldn't be as high, giving us that money to move over to capital, just kind of be ready for some of those things, and it might cause us to have a nominal levy increase for an extra year or something like that, we might continue it a little bit longer. We just don't know, we don't have a crystal ball, so.
One of the other things, I just want to go back to your question about the history. Pre-COVID, we were already talking about the need to start bumping that levy
Okay,
incrementally.
so you knew that it
So
was
we
coming.
knew it was coming, Yeah, and this has been a conversation for many years at the board level and at the staff level, just that kind of watching that and see how long can we go without increasing those taxes. And so, really the critical point for us is when those two, when that expenditure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The Maker Place anticipated expenses for 2026 were operating expenses, were higher, like it was a pretty fast increase. Was there something specifically that was driving that piece?
That's the same, kind of effect of that, extra adjustment for personnel that is gonna go up more than 2%. So it's just the assumption, the 2%, but also like a little bit extra for, personnel costs, so.
I mean, I guess that's sort of like the idea is like, are we hiring more people specific to the Maker Place, or it's just
For this
part of,
purpose,
like-
it's like not that granular, it's kind of a higher level assumption being applied there, yeah.
How, in terms of, capital expenses for this year, are we I mean, I know we have what we have, but are we pretty favorable, pretty on target?
Too soon to tell with the construction project
Yeah.
started today.
Which is a big one,
Yeah, that's the biggest.
yeah.
I think everything else in capital is running favorable. Tracy, do you have a reason?
Yeah, so on the budget summary, that page 1, on the second column where we have projected, for things like the interior renovations where we don't have enough information, I just assume we're gonna fund it all, right? That's just the assumption for the projection. So we anticipate to end at 1,520,000 about, and the budget is 1,507,000. So yeah, under budget, but not significantly.
Well, okay, so the next time we see this is when?
At the October committee of the whole,
Right.
I'll bring it back. I'll call that kind of draft 2. We, between now and then, we kind of just firm things up. Those little blue cells I was talking about,
Yeah.
we, double check kind of our personnel budgets with each of the individual manager, make sure it's kind of what they're expecting to see for their staff. We, watch for industry updates, like a updated cost of living adjustment estimate, we'll probably get released, before then, and just make sure we have in budget, things like that. So yeah, we'll bring it back to you, the October committee, the whole.
Okay. I guess my, obviously, we'll discuss it and we'll have even more information then. My personal sort of opinion after seeing this for as many years as I've been on the board, I wish that we could say, like, according to this, we would be levying 7.5% increase over the 2 years. I wish it were more like 3.25 or even 4 and 4 instead of, I don't know, it feels like a lot, and I think we also just have to remember that when we levy 4%, me on my tax bill, I see 6% because of the 2% lost cost, and everything is going up. I don't know. I know it's not that much in actual dollars, but it feels like going from 0 for so long to, and now 4.45. I wish it could be a little more gradual, or even 2 and then get used to 4 for a few years. It just this year, it seems rough, but you know, I get it. I'm only one person. I'm only one vote. That's, and I don't know. I don't want you to take anything out that you really think is necessary. I wonder if we could do a 255,000 deficit instead of 171,000 deficit. And, you know, I don't know.
Well, we can go back and talk more about it and see if we can sharpen
I mean,
our.
yeah.
Bring back.
Does anyone else have that feeling, or are we just overthinking it?
I struggle with the idea of like, we can sit here and know that the levy, there wasn't a levy for so long, but it doesn't matter at the end of the day when everyone receives their tax bill. Like, you know what I mean? Memories are short when it comes to that, and I feel like everyone's getting hit by so much right now. That's where I think that's where the struggle is. It's like, we're not the only ask right now. But I can certainly appreciate the fact that, like, with the cost of everything, the fact that we haven't raised it, like, yep. Kind of catching up. So I guess I'm on the fence. Yeah.
No, I mean, I've talked a lot. I mean, I just, my only concern with kind of nickel and diming, and no pun intended with that, I just mean like, and then like, you know, 3%, 3.2% is that, you know, as you mentioned, just with the actual cost, and I'm not negating, you know, a $4 difference on a tax bill of an average household cost because you add each intergovernmental or governmental agency and that adds up. You know, and then on top of like, you know, families, so everything adds up. My concern though, is that I think, you know, Mike, you mentioned like, just something if we keep going low, there might become a point when it has to go higher because we were too, kind of tiptoeing too slowly. And then we end up in a really significant deficit because we're like, oh, we should wait. And then it's gonna be too large, too long. Instead of incrementally going up, being a little more proactive. Again, being mindful of what differences we're talking about. And we're talking about 170,000 to 250 from the whole tax base, right? I mean, again, not minimizing, just kind of looking at it from that global perspective. And also in a time when costs are rising and everyone is getting hit, the one place, you know, the library and the services that are available, it almost makes us more valuable because we are there, we are providing these services. And that's our job too, to be able to promote that, like, hey, look, you can get this here, you can do this here. And, you know, so I guess I would tend to kind of go with what is being recommended, at least in that ballpark, and I know we're not voting tonight.
Yeah. Very good. That's why we always remind our taxpayers, use your library. You would have to pay $470 if you lived in unincorporated Arlington Heights to buy a library card. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for all of this work. I know it is a ton and your whole your staff and.
Yeah,
everyone.
the staff, the manager is covered, this is a library-wide effort for sure, and I appreciate all the discussion and questions tonight, you know, I think. Nobody takes it lightly, so I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Thank you. All right. Let's move to item number 3.
All right, so for item 3, we are looking at proposed revisions to policy 7.016, which is alcohol. The library has a existing policy to serve alcohol during special events. The change to the policy that I'm proposing this evening is to be able to sell alcohol also. We've been doing more events both here at the Maker Place, and I guess we've done maybe 1 or 2 at the main library, maybe not. But mostly here at the Maker Place, where we are serving alcohol. That has, you know, we've done stuff with the foundation and our own. We also do off-site events like at Eddie's. We do book discussions over there, where the library is serving alcohol. You know, one of our strategic plans is to draw on different demographics and younger crowd, different crowds. And one of the ways we can do that is make these events a little bit more interesting for them, a little bit more of what they're used to. We also have our One Book, One Village Gala coming up on September 27th. And as part of that, we are working with Bitter and Sweet to offer alcohol for sale at that event. And so in order to do that, we'd like to change our policy to remove the line that says the selling of alcohol or tickets for alcoholic beverages is prohibited. We would remove that, and then we would change one line in the general rules and restrictions, adding selling of alcohol. So the serving or selling of alcohol is not permitted at any event unless first approved by the library's executive director. So since we do have a little bit of experience with serving alcohol at events, we do, our security department is privy to this, to those events. Our insurance is aware that we've been through kind of the knowledge of the curve to be able to provide those events with alcohol. And we've worked with the village on this as well, as far as permitting and stuff like that. And so with selling alcohol, there is a different permit through the village that whether if we're selling or someone else is coming in to sell, there is a different permit process that we have to go through. So we are aware of that. And, you know, as it currently exists, when we're serving alcohol, we do require the Bassett certification and have the certificate of insurance from, if, say, the foundation is doing it or somebody renting the space and serving alcohol, they would have to provide us with certificate of insurance. So we do have a lot of that groundwork already laid. This would just be adding that selling component. So I did have a couple of questions that were emailed to me before. Will additional security or staff training be required when alcohol is sold rather than just served? I think that from a security perspective, really the handling of this is very similar. It would be people with alcohol. The difference might be that could be cash money involved. And so we do have our security staff help, say, the Friends of the Library when they do the sales with the transfer of money. They keep it in the safe, stuff like that. So we might have security involved with that. If there is any, we will talk to our insurance about that and just make sure there's no additional training that they would need for the sale. And then does our current liability insurance fully cover alcohol sales, or will additional coverage be required? When we talked to them about serving alcohol, I don't think it was a special rider for that. Was it, Tracy? It was just included in our regular insurance.
The certification?
Yeah, just the coverage for serving alcohol.
No, yeah, it's called host liquor
That's it.
coverage, it's already included in our package.
Yeah, so we already have that. And then as far as the certifications and stuff like that, we would still require the Bassett certification. We've talked to the attorney about this too, and legally, from a legal perspective, there's nothing prohibiting us from selling alcohol, with the exception of we would have to work with the village to ensure that whatever certifications they require or permits they require that we obtain. And that's our normal process anyway. So those were all the questions I had so far. Did anybody else have questions about it, or? concerns?
Do we see this as a revenue source?
It could be. For the gala, we are having, Bitter and Sweet come in and sell, but we're not involved in the selling at all. They're, they're managing all of that. But I could see like for, especially like with foundation, doing, maybe some revenue generating stream there. But yeah, I think that's interesting. Or maybe a wine bar at the library. That'd be cool.
I can see a foundation event here. I mean, generally you buy the ticket and maybe some alcohol is included, but they could have a cash bar here.
Yeah.
That could be cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm Bassett trained, but a lot of the churches have different events from a parish picnic or whatever. They seem to work out fine. I don't think anyone's coming to the library to underage drink.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And being that we've been already serving it, like that is the big leap. I
Right.
think is when actually going from not serving it to serving it, going from serving to selling is, I don't think that much of a change.
Okay. All right. Moving on to a proposed revision to policy regarding Americans with Disabilities Act compliance.
Yes, so we are proposing some changes to our ADA policy. These are really changes to align ourselves with the current ADA requirements, as well as our ADA transition plan. So in 2024, we had a company come out and give us an assessment of our ADA, the facility, a number of different aspects to look at in regards to the Americans with Disabilities Act. And then we put together a transition plan of things that we were going to change within the library, the website, the physical facility, and updating our policy and getting everything up to date. So there are a few things in this policy that are changed. Some of it is they're small changes, but other ones are larger. The grievance procedure is completely changed in here to be in line with the ADA, just in compliance with what the requirements are. There is one change to the animals that's recognized as a service animal, and so that would be the addition of miniature horses. So dogs and miniature horses are officially recognized as service animals, and so we would be adding that. We did make some changes to the TTY, which is an older technology of, it's a system that we used to have where people could call in. And it's basically like a text to voice conversion. We've eliminated that because our service provider eliminated it, and we've replaced it with a text service. Let's see. And then small changes like service animals are not required to wear special capes, identifying vests or collars. That was something that our attorney recommended that we put in there. Those are kind of the big elements. There were some questions about the miniature horses. Do we anticipate any operational or liability concerns if patrons bring them into the library? Those animals would have to be trained and certified just like the dogs would. And so if someone brought in a dog and there was an issue with it, regardless of whether it's a service animal or not, if there was a behavioral problem, we'd ask them to leave, and we can do that under our policy. Same thing with the horse. If the horse, and they're not full-size horses, they're very small horses. We've actually had them for events at the library, and they're really cool. But it would be the same thing. If there was a behavior issue with that animal, we would ask them to leave. And then are there updates to staff training that would ensure employees understand how to handle situations involving those animals? Yes, we do a training called Positive Interactions, which provides an introduction to library staff about communicating and interacting with people with disabilities. And so this would be added to that training. And that's kind of a revolving training that all staff take. And so once this is approved, we'll interject that right into that training for the rest of this year and in the next year, and then going forward as we do it.
Do we have a lot of service animals at the library? Have we?
Once in a while, we have one, and we don't know if it's a service animal or not. We can ask them if,
Right.
if it is, but
That's two
those two questions, but we don't, we don't really, push people on if it's not a service animal. I mean, if it's clearly a pet or something, that would be different, but, in most cases, they would appear to be service animals. So once in a while.
Just wonder how, like, kids might react, like thinking it's a pet or, you know.
Yeah.
But obviously service animals are trained, so they wouldn't react to a kid.
Exactly. But I could see how a miniature horse would draw a lot of attention. When we had them, for an event a couple years ago, and the line was basically from the core stairs right over
Yeah.
there is where the animals were, and it went all the way to the Dutton entrance for people waiting in line to see them. So, they were very popular, and, so I would imagine if somebody brought in a miniature horse, it would draw, both staff and customer attention.
How about, have you had, many grievances regarding our ADA policy?
I'm not aware of it.
Right. Yeah, good.
People say I was on the ADA website, and I was like, "Wait, really?"
I know, I had to look that up too.
I did go back and look through all of it as I was like trying to get my questions ready for you, and I was like, oh, okay, okay. I wouldn't have guessed that. I mean, but it was interesting that like having them be housebroken was like one of the stipulations of the service animal, because first I'm like, you have new carpet.
Yeah, right.
That's what I thought. Do we know why why they are not required to wear any type of identification? I mean, they just always were, every time I see them, they have it, so kind of kids know not to run up there and they're not supposed, and if you have allergies of animals, so I was just kind of surprised, I guess I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
On the
It's not
website though,
required.
it did say, like on the .gov website, it calls out
That they have to or they don't have
they
to?
don't have to.
Yeah, I just don't know what, a lot of people
Yeah.
complain about it, like the
So at least
gloves.
it
I mean,
I
to me,
think
I
it-
like seeing that on the service animal, because then I know, like, that's,
I was
think
looking
it-
at them for that reason.
I think it might call out a disability and people might,
that's okay. that makes
feel
sense.
like, they don't necessarily want to be called out for it.
Yeah, I think I just always thought people, like, I didn't look at the person or the handler, I was looking at like the dog, like, okay, the dog's doing a job, so don't go petting and bothering them or anything, because it's like a really,
Right, like.
a
the
well-trained service dog doing so, and that's how I looked at it, I didn't look at the other.
I looked at it
side.
for our library staff, because I was like, well, if somebody brings in an animal, like, what's the protection for our staff that it is truly a service animal, like, so that's,
You're
that
not
was
gonna
the rabbit hole I
inadvertently
went down
say
on the
something.
website, trying to figure out like, okay, well, what can they do, but I mean, this
We assume
policy
that-
right?
Yeah, exactly.
The policy outlines it really well, though, like, I mean, it mirrors very closely what the website had. Learned more about that than I had, had anticipated this weekend.
All right, well, thank you
Questions on that one?
for that explanation.
All right, so we'll bring both of those policies back to the September board meeting for further discussion, and or approval.
Which is next week.
Next week already, yes.
All right,
And that will be in the.
yes.
That will be it. And then the committee of the whole in October, we'll be back here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. All right, other.
I have a few things.
Yeah,
Well, first of all, the Park District Board, we do our joint meeting every year. We're planning that for October 25th at 8:30 a.m. So, we'll send out more information on that, as it becomes available. For OBOB, just wanted to let you know that that is going really well. We're getting a ton of checkouts on the book. The village presentation is September 15th, so we'll be presenting the book to the village board. And then our gala is September 27th. And then I mentioned the construction on the second floor of the library started today. So they basically closed off the second floor today, put up the plastic, and they're prepping everything, moving furniture and getting the rooms ready to go. So that we're looking forward to that, getting rolling and getting done.
And it was very well announced. I
Yeah.
saw it on social media, I got an email, I got it. So that was-
Good to hear. Good to hear. We did kick it off with that LED lighting upgrade that's complete now, so they went through and updated a lot of our incandescent bulbs throughout the library, so that was a good start to that. And then the lockers, wanted to let you know that we're gonna have extensions for the Camelot and Heritage Lockers. They're so popular that we are actually adding another column. So that those are on order. Our foundation, and Gallagher Insurance are sponsoring that. So, that is no charge.
I love those Camelot lockers.
Oh, they're great, aren't they? The Camelot ones are very, very
I
popular.
love it. It's
Very
right there. I just zoop, pick it up. Don't have to
Yeah.
take traffic and come here. So
Yeah.
good. I love it.
So we're expecting those within the next 4 to 6 weeks or so. Those will be coming. And then our bookmobile contract is signed. We did have somebody come out and evaluate the driveway to make sure it would fit. That it would be able to make that drive in without hitting. All looks good. So that contract is signed and rolling.
And that was the 2020
Yep.
Ford chassis, correct?
2024
Yeah,
chassis.
which was a little bit less expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, saved us about $6,000.
Okay,
I think that's everything I have, brother.
all right.
When is slotted for what the bookmobile is gonna look like? That's part of the rebrand.
That is part of the rebrand, yes. Sasha, do you want to speak to that at all?
We are still in the process of, it's in our graphic designers, our main graphic designers hands right now.
Okay.
And all the information will be gave to him to kind of see our vision, so we're still kind of at the beginning.
Okay.
Stage of that, so we aren't sure about the portfolio yet.
Yeah, I was just
Under
thinking,
wraps.
I think we had expected the bookmobile construction, whatever, creation to take a lot longer
Right,
when we
yeah.
had originally talked about it, and I was like, oh, your deadline goes way faster now. With them delivering like what, early next year,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's probably second quarter next year is what we're shooting for, so.
We'll be ready no matter what, so.
No doubt.
One other note with, loosely relating to the bookmobile is, Ron Maravik, our bookmobile supervisor, will be retiring in October, so.
Oh,
Yeah, so he is, gotten us this far with the new bookmobile and he is driving off.
Go get
into
your
the-
CDL, Mike.
Right. Sounds good. On a day like today, I would not mind being outside driving around.
that's a big role to fill.
That's everything I have, brother.
All right, very good. We have a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Hey.
All right.
Aye.
So excited for the bookmobile.
You're probably gonna work.